All right, so you're ready to dive deep into Google Analytics 4 and really get beyond just the surface level stuff. That's awesome. It reminds me of how we used to think about website analytics, like just counting how many people walk past a store,
Yeah.
you know. But GA4, it seems like a completely different ballgame, right?
It really is. Yeah, it's way more than just counting how many people walked past. It's like this, those security cameras they used to have that were kind of blurry and you couldn't really make out who was who.
Oh, yeah, like the ones in the old detective movies.
Exactly. It's like trading those old cameras for like ultra high definition
Right.
footage with GA4. You see the details, you understand what people are actually doing on your site.
So it's less about the raw numbers and more about understanding the behavior behind those numbers.
Exactly. It's about moving from like a quantity mindset to a quality mindset with your data.
I like that. So how does GA4 actually make that shift? What's the secret sauce?
The key is that it's event-based. See older analytics platforms. They're mostly focused on page views, just counting how many times someone loaded a page. But with GA4, every interaction is tracked, every click, scroll, video play, all of it.
So instead of just knowing someone landed on my home page,
Hmm.
I can actually see that they clicked on a specific product image, then watched the demo video for 2 minutes, and even downloaded a product brochure.
Exactly. You're getting this rich, detailed picture of their journey on your site, not just a series of disconnected page loads.
Wow. Okay, so instead of just seeing footprints, we're seeing the actual path they're taking and what's catching their eye along the way.
You got it. And the best part is that level of detail. It lets you understand what's resonating with your audience, what's holding their attention, and where they might need a little nudge in the right direction.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and it seems like that kind of insight would be insanely valuable for any business owner, right?
Absolutely. This isn't just about collecting data for the sake of having it. It's about using that data to make smarter decisions to improve your website, your marketing, your entire customer experience.
So it's like having a roadmap instead of just kind of wandering around hoping we find our destination.
Exactly. It's about clarity and direction. And here's another thing GA4 gets. It recognizes that today's customer journey, it's not linear. People don't just stick to one device anymore.
Oh yeah, totally. I do that all the time. Like I might browse products on my phone and then switch over my laptop to actually make the purchase later.
Exactly. In GA4, it brings all that together. It merges your website and app data. So you have a complete view of the customer journey, regardless of how they're choosing to interact with you.
That's huge. So we've gone from blurry footprints, high definition footage, and now we're talking about connecting all the different screens that those footsteps are landing on. That's quite a leap. I am even more curious to dig into the specifics now, like what are the actual tools and features that GA4 offers?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've traded in our magnifying glass for a high-powered microscope when it comes to understanding our audience. What are we actually looking at through this microscope? What are some of the cool tools that GA4 has up its sleeve?
Well, you know how we talked about GA4 being event-based? It's not just about collecting more data, it's about customizing what you track.
You mean I'm not stuck with some preset list of metrics? I can actually choose what I want to measure.
Exactly. GA4 lets you define custom events that are super relevant to your business. Like, let's say you have this amazing interactive infographic on your website, something you put a ton of effort into.
Oh, I feel that. I love a good infographic.
Right. So with GA4, you can track exactly how many people are engaging with that infographic, how long are they spending exploring it, which parts get the most attention. That's valuable insight you just wouldn't get with a simple page view count.
It's like the difference between knowing someone glanced at a flyer versus like actually stopping to read the whole thing.
Exactly. And the best part is all this granular detail. It helps you see what's resonating with your audience, what's keeping them hooked, and what might need a little tweaking. It's all about optimization.
Okay, I'm picking up what you're putting down. So custom events are huge.
Mhm.
What else is in GA4's toolbox? I read something about predictive metrics in the materials I shared. Does that mean GA4 can actually tell me the future?
It's not a crystal ball or anything, but it's getting pretty close. GA4 uses machine learning to analyze mountains of data and identify patterns. And based on those patterns, it can actually make predictions about future user behavior.
Okay, hold on. That sounds amazing, but also a little bit spooky. Give me an example. How would I actually use this in my business?
Sure, so let's say you run an online clothing store. GA4 might analyze your past purchase data and be like, hey, I've noticed that customers who buy these jeans, they're also super likely to buy this particular belt within the next week.
Oh, wow. So it's like having a virtual stylist almost.
Exactly. But instead of just making random recommendations, it's all based on real data and user behavior patterns with that information. You could proactively recommend that belt to those customers, maybe even offer a special discount, and boom, you've significantly increased your chances of making a sale.
So GA4 is like having a superpowered sales assistant who can anticipate customer needs before they even realize it themselves. Okay, that's pretty impressive. But with all this talk of data and predictions, I have to ask, what about privacy? That feels like a big deal, especially with all the news about data breaches and regulations these days.
You are absolutely right to be thinking about privacy. It is incredibly important, and it's something that we should never take lightly. Thankfully, GA4 has been designed with privacy in mind from the ground up.
Okay, that's good to hear. But how does that actually work in practice?
One way is by emphasizing first-party data. Remember, that's data that you collect directly from your website visitors or app users, ideally with their consent. GA4 is built to leverage this type of data effectively.
So less reliance on those shady third-party trackers that follow you around the internet, like a creepier version of Santa Claus.
Precisely. But it goes beyond that too. GA4 also focuses on data minimization, which basically means it only collects the data that's absolutely necessary. And it gives users more control over their data with the options to adjust privacy settings and even request data dilution.
So it's like GA4 is saying, hey, we hear your concerns about privacy, and we're building a system that respects those boundaries while still giving you incredibly valuable insights.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance between powerful analytics and ethical data practices. You really can have both.
Okay, so it seems like GA4 is really trying to walk that tightrope between, giving us all this amazing data, but also doing it in a way that's responsible and ethical. And that actually brings us to another big topic that you flagged in the materials, those third-party cookies that always seem to be lurking around the internet.
Right, those little trackers, they've been the backbone of online advertising for years, haven't they? But things are changing and fast.
I've seen a lot of headlines about browsers like Safari and Firefox phasing them out and regulations like you mentioned earlier. Those are changing the game too. So what's the deal with that? What's making these third-party cookies so unpopular all of a sudden?
Well, it really comes down to those privacy concerns we were just talking about. You see
Yeah.
a third-party cookie, it's kind of like having someone secretly following you around a store, writing down everything you look at, and then sharing that information with other stores without you knowing.
Okay, yeah, that is definitely a little creepy when you put it like that. No one wants to feel like they're being spied on.
Exactly. People are starting to realize what's at stake, and they're demanding more control over their data. And that's where regulations like GDPR and CCPA come in. They're basically setting new rules for how companies can collect and use our personal information online.
And that's where GA4's focus on first-party data becomes even more important, right? Like it was almost ahead of its time in a way.
You got it. A GA4 was designed for this new privacy-focused landscape. It's less reliant on those third-party cookies that are quickly becoming obsolete because it prioritizes the data you collect directly from your audience, with their consent, of course.
So if I'm a business owner right now, I should be thinking about this as future-proofing my analytics strategy. It's like I'm building my house on solid ground instead of on shaky sand.
That's a great way to put it. It's about owning your data and owning your relationship with your customer instead of relying on these external trackers that are becoming less and less reliable. GA4 empowers you to build those direct relationships and to gather data ethically.
Okay, I'm sold. But even with all these explanations, it still feels a bit daunting. Is there like a big learning curve with this platform? Should I be scared to even log in?
You definitely don't need to be scared. Sure, there's a bit of a learning curve, but it's more like learning a new skill or like learning a new language. It takes a little time and effort, but the rewards are absolutely worth it.
So where do we even start? Where should our listeners go to start wrapping their heads around GA4?
Well, the good news is you don't have to do it alone. There are tons of amazing resources out there. The Google Analytics Academy has some great free courses you can take, and there are countless blog posts, videos, even entire communities dedicated to helping people master GA4. Just start exploring and see what works for you.
It's like anything new, right? It always feels a bit overwhelming at first, but when you break it down into smaller steps and you realize you have support, it becomes much more manageable. And speaking of support, I want to thank you for being here today and sharing your expertise with us. It's been incredibly helpful to dive into GA4 with you.
My pleasure. I'm always happy to geek out about analytics.
And to our listeners, if you're feeling inspired to dive into GA4 yourself, I say go for it. Don't be afraid to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty. And remember, it's not just about the numbers. It's about understanding the people behind those numbers. What are their motivations, their pain points, their aspirations? The answers are hidden in the data, just waiting to be uncovered. And who knows, maybe you'll discover something about your audience you never even knew you didn't know.
It happens more often than you think.
That's the beauty of data, isn't it? There's always something new to learn. All right, folks, that's a wrap on this deep dive into Google Analytics 4. We hope you learned a ton and that you're feeling empowered to explore this powerful platform for yourselves. Until next time, happy analyzing.